contribute towards doing the practical oriented sessions tomorrow and day after tomorrow from today afternoon onwards. Okay, so we will start and continue with the further sessions. Today we welcome Dr. Bhushan Jadhav sir. Uh, he is assistant professor from Thadomal Sani Engineering College, Mumbai. He has completed many international courses on Python, Udemy, data sciences, DevOps from Microsoft, CNN courses, and many CNN courses also he has completed. His areas of interest lies into cloud computing, big data, data science, DevOps, and all these mentioned topics. Recently, his team also has won a prize in coding competition. Sir has many publications under his name and has delivered expert lectures on many FDPs conferences across across many states and universities. Can I request Bhushan Jadhav sir to please start the session? Bhushan sir. Good morning, Bhushan sir. Bhushan sir, can you please unmute? Bhushan sir,
I'm
am I on?
audible, sir?
Ha, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Sir, I'm sharing my screen. Just tell me
Yeah,
whether it's
yes, sir.
visible or
Yes,
not. Just a
yes,
minute.
sir. Yes, sir.
Is it visible, sir?
No, no. हाँ अभी आया.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you so much, sir, for nice introduction. And
Thank
I
you.
welcome all for this wonderful STTP course, right? And I appreciate your effort taken for attending this course. And today's my presentation topic is a little bit different. That means it's based on the networking. So the topic name is networking and the other technologies in creating the enterprise-wide digital solutions. So this is what the agenda of my entire presentation would be. Initially, we'll see we'll see the introduction to the existing network applications, existing network technologies. Then we'll see the what are the advancement to these technologies, right, based on the network, like a cluster computing, grid computing, cloud computing. Then the followed by cloud, there is a evolution of SDN, which is highly demanding now in the IT industries, software defined network. And followed by that, we'll see how quantum computing leverages the networking concept, how quantum internet works, or how quantum teleportation works, right? And followed by that, I'll just explain you show you some of the tools which could be used for performing practicals or simulations based on the quantum computing, right? So let's start. So basically, as you know, nowadays, most of the enterprise applications runs over the internet, right? And the minimum requirement for running this application is they need a huge that means the high computing power for processing along with the huge data in the processing a huge data in the lesser time, right? So most of the application runs over the internet today used to basically generate a huge amount of data, and that huge amount of data has to be executed or processed in a lesser amount of time. And to process such a data, there is a high computation power is required, right? So basically, we can say the basic definition of computing is the execution of single or multiple programs or the applications or the tasks or the activities sequentially or parallelly on one or more computers, right? So at the initial stage of the computing, the standalone computers used to be were used to solve the large computational tasks, right? So in the sequential computing, basically the large task used to be splitted into the small batches, and those batches used to be executed in a sequential manner. But the limitation of sequential manner was the time consumed was very that means was more. So that's why it was evolved with the concept of the distributed computing, right? So, but later on, while the evolution of computer network, they started using the multiple computers. So earlier, the single computer used to be used, single standalone computer used to be used for solving the large computational tasks. And later on, it has been evolved with the distributed computing. So in the distributed computing, basically multiple pieces or multiple number of computers are used for executing the task. Let me show you one small simulation. So this is what the right, this is what the traditional technique where the computer network was used for executing the centralized task, where there is a centralized server, right? And the every computer used to basically place a task to be executed onto the server, and it used to be passed from the client to the server, right? So this centralized system has one drawback, right? The drawback means what, if you have single point of failure, that means if your server gets failed, then no computer will able to communicate with others, right? So that's why this problem is solved by the distributed computing, where we used to have a different distributed computers who used to communicate with each other. So if any of the server gets failed, it will not affect to the other system. It will not affect to the other system. I can show you here. So for example, this is connected, but if I drop a packet between these two computers, they won't get communicated. They won't get communicated. I'll just press a DHCP. It will show you DHCP request fail. That means this computer is not basically will not able to communicate with the other computer, right? Here you could see it is showing failed. If I run a simulation here, it will not deliver the packet, right? In this scenario, right? In the first scenario, let me delete the rest of the simulations here. So I'm just delivering a packet from here to here, right? And it will show you the field of simulation, because the single point of failure is there in the centralized system, where if server goes off, your entire connection would goes off, right? So that's why the distributed computing has come into the picture. Distributed means what? The computational servers are placed at multiple locations, and multiple servers are used to basically process the task. Process the task means performing the computations, right? So if any of the server gets failed, the processing is basically handled by the other computer, because the master slave concept used to be used, where the replica of one server is basically created at the other end, right? So initial stage of computing, the standalone computer were used to solve the large computational task, while it is evolved with the distributed computing, where multiple servers are used for the computations, right? So in the distributed computing, multiple computers are interconnected by the network, and they are used to solve the complex computational problem. So as you know, the entire distributed system is handled by the computer network. If you do not have a concept of computer network there, right? So then there would be a problem of communicating between the different computers. So computer network is basically nothing but the collection of separate and the independent interconnected computers connected by a single technology. So it plays an important role by making the communication across different computers or the servers for executing the computations. So that's why the computer network is found to be a game-changing technology for distributed computing, grid computing, cluster computing, and recently it has been used in the quantum computing as well, right? So in many cases, the computations are either running centralized or the distributed. I already demonstrated how centralized was, where we used to have a single server, which is basically used for processing the multiple tasks, right? If a centralized server goes off, then entire system will collapse. That is the limitation of centralized. So that's why the concept of distributed system has come. Distributed means what? Distributed servers are used, right? And distributed servers are used for processing the distributed computations, right? So when the application runs in a centralized manner, it may provide a limited scalability as well as this single point of failure or slower computing performance or the hardware limitation, right? But if the application runs in a distributed manner, then you may get the scalability, high scalability. So what is scalability? The scalability is nothing but the increasing the computational power, right? So if you have a centralized system, then we used to use the vertical scaling. The vertical scaling is nothing but increasing the computing power of a single server. While in the distributed system, the horizontal scalability is used. So horizontal scalability is nothing but adding the multiple servers and then creating a resource pool from that all the multiple servers, right? So distributed system provides the high scalability, but one limitation of distributed system is the latency. Latency in sending the data from one end of node to the another end of the node, right? So distributed system is again evolved with so all the recent technologies which are basically a client server based technology, they uses a distributed system as an backbone, right? A backbone of the computing, recent computing technologies like a cluster computing, grid computing, cloud computing, and the quantum computing, right? So let's see one by one. Cluster computing first. So cluster computing is one of the first technology where the client server technology was used with the help of the distributed system, right? So in the cluster computing, the cluster of servers are interconnected on the network like a LAN or storage area network with the high bandwidth, low latency, along with the gigabit Ethernet. That means the internet. That means the essential part of the cluster computing was the Ethernet or the internet. So in the WAN environment, the basically internet or the VPN is used for the connectivity between the cluster servers and the gateways, right? And the main advantage of cluster computing is the scalability, but it has a limited scalability than the recent computational technologies like a cloud computing or the high performance computing or the HPC or the HTC. So the cluster computing has a loosely coupled computers, and they have the local operating system for managing the resources. And this is what the diagram is, where we used to have a 3 servers, which are called as in cluster servers. They have a copy of replica with a replica of the data, and all the computers are connected to them to process the application. But the limitations of cluster computing were, first one, it was difficult to manage and organize the large number of computers, because cluster computing used to be right, basically used to allow the limited number of computers to be interlinked and process the data, right? So it's difficult to manage and organize a large number of computers in the cluster computing. Second, it has a poor performance in case of the parallelized applications. Then physical space needed is considerably greater than the single server, because for cluster computing there is a requirement of many networking devices, and it basically increases the power consumption. It requires a high power consumption as compared to the single server in the centralized system, right? So that's why the cluster computing is evolved with the new technology called as in grid computing, right? So till now, what you have seen first, we've seen what is the requirement for the computing. So computing is required for the recent applications. The enterprise application nowadays used to requires a high computing power and high data storage, right? And to process the data, it requires a high computational power. The high computational power can be delivered, not can't be delivered through a single server, can't be delivered through a single server. So there is a need of the network server where horizontal scalability would be provided, right? So that it should satisfy the requirement of the consumer who requires a high computing power and want to execute the application in the lesser time, right? So the backbone of this computing is the multiple server is basically fulfilled using the computer network. The computer network is basically used for connecting the different servers and the computers together, where the computing can be done using two ways, rather the centralized and the distributed. So in the centralized computational mechanism, a single server is responsible for executing the task. The server has a high-end computational power than the all the peer computers. A single server is basically responsible for executing the task, so that all computers can send their job to the server. Server executes it and then send result back to the client, right? But the limitation of centralized computing was the single point of failure, latency, and all. Single point of failure, right? So single point of failure means what? If the centralized server goes up, then entire system may collapse. So later on, that centralized computing system is basically evolved with the distributed. So distributed means what? The multiple servers are used for executing the task, right? Where the multiple servers are connected through a network, and every client, which that means the complex task is basically splitted into multiple splits, and these splits are assigned to the every server. So every server executes it and returns the result to the client. So faster computation happens in the distributed system. So that's why distributed system is the backbone for the all recent computing technologies like cluster computing, grid computing, and the cloud computing. right? Let us see what grid computing is. So we have seen the grid cluster computing first, where cluster of commodity server or the loosely coupled computers are used for executing the task, right? But the limitation of cluster computing was, first one, it was difficult to manage the large number of computers, as it has it supports a limited number of computers. Beyond that, if you increase the number of computers, it may generate some latency and gives the poor performance. So second is a poor performance in case of the non-parallelized application. So it was basically designed for executing the parallelizable applications only, right? And cluster computing also requires more space, considerably greater than the single server. So it also has the increased power consumption than the single server in case of if you compare the cluster computing with the centralized computing, right? So cluster computing is again evolved with the grid computing, right? So grid means what? It's basically a group of network computing which are connected over the internet, right? So any computer which want to execute a complex task can be a part of the grid, right? It is like a electric grid, right? So grid computing is a group of network computer which work together as a virtual computer to perform a larger task, right? So it is basically analogous to the electric grid, which gives the consistent and transparent access to the shared resources, right? And this grid can be constructed over the local area network, that is LAN, or over the internet, that is over the WAN, right? So it uses the widely distributed resources to reach the common goal, right? The SETI at home is one of the famous application runs over the grid, right? And basically the main disadvantage, the biggest goal of grid computing is it provides a very good scalability, right? Very good scalability, right? So it usually consists of one main computer that distribute the information. So it uses a master slave concept. The one main computer is there, which is basically used for assigning the task to group of network computer, right? So it consists of one main computer that distribute the information and the task to the group of network computers to accomplish the common goal. So basically, grid computing is often used to complete the complex mathematical operations, right? Where multiple computers are used for executing the task. So centralized server is there, right? Centralized server basically takes the task, divided into the multiple chunks, and it assigns chunks to the group of network computers. So all the chunks are executed by the network computers, and then they return the result to the main computer to get the final outcome, right? And the advantages of grid computing are basically it can solve a larger or the complex problem in a shorter time, obviously, because grid computing is basically most of the time runs over the internet, right? So all the computer who want to participate in the in the grid computing or the grid execution can be a grid slave, right? And basically multiple number of computers are used for solving the complex problem, so it takes a shorter time than the other computing technologies. It is easier to collaborate with the other organization, as well as it make better use of the existing hardware. You do not have to purchase the specialized servers, so you can use your commodity hardware for processing the data or the processing the computations, right? This is what the example is. Laptop, PCs, databases, supercomputers, all are connected to a common grid, right? So common grid is basically used for assigning the task to the every computer or the laptop. They execute and return result to the main computer, and through a main computer we get the outcome. But it has some limitation. First one, as we know, the grid computing, when grid runs over the internet, the many of the computers are basically distributed geographically at diverse places, right? So it is very difficult to locate and manage them, difficult to manage, locate and manage them. In case of failure of any of the computer, any of the resources, that would basically generates an latency in the outcome. Then it requires a faster interconnect network between the compute resources. Third one, licensing. So basically every computer basically used to have a different operating system, and the licensing across many servers may take the prohibitive for the some of the applications. It is not possible to execute all the kinds of application onto the different kinds of operating system, right? So most of the application used to be OS dependent. Those OS dependent applications can't be executed onto the grid server, onto the specific grid servers. right? And basically these standards are still evolving. They are not basically completely fulfilled by the right standardized committee like a Globus toolkit and all, right? And it has a non-interactive job submission, right? There is no interactive portal through which a user can send their job for the execution onto the centralized server. So it has a non-interactive job submission for the grid servers. And finally, the many groups are reluctant to the sharing the resources. So if you are taking a part in the grid computing, then your computer is basically asked to share the resources. But many groups are reluctant with the sharing resources, right? So even if it will benefit the everyone involved, right? So many of them are basically not basically reluctant to share their resources, their computing resources like memory, CPU, or the storage spaces for executing the job. So in that case, the grid computing may generate some problems. So these are the limitations of grid computing. So till now, initially we have seen what is computing. Then we have seen how do we do the computing, sequential and the network computing, that is a distributed. So right, then centralized and distributed, we have seen the difference between centralized and the distributed, decentralized and distributed computing. And after that we have seen the four basic evolution of distributed applications like a cluster computing. Then second one is the grid computing. Third one is the cloud computing. So cloud computing is basically one of the uh, hit technology. It's a buzzword because cloud computing basically used in most of the applications nowadays. All the emerging applications could be run over the cloud. So cloud computing basically has a harnessed power. So for example, you want to run an application which requires suppose a 500 GB, 500 1000 GB of RAM, or suppose your application requires suppose 10 terabytes of hard drive. So that could be possible with the cloud computing because it has a resource pool. It has a resource pool, right? So because of resource pooling, the cloud computing can provide unlimited power for the computation, unlimited power for the computation, right? So the simplest definition of cloud computing is it's a aggregation of computing resources, right? Computing resources are the CPU, memory, and the IO, right? So it has an aggregation of computing resources, network solutions, storage management solutions, virtualization applications, which are available on demand, and they are delivered economically, right? So cloud computing basically used to use the concept of distributed processing, right, where the multiple virtual machines can be used for processing the data, right? So the backbone of cloud computing is the virtualization. Backbone of cloud computing is the virtualization. So virtualization allows you to create the virtual version of operating system, virtual version of storage, virtual version of IO, virtual version of computing, and so on, right? So it allows you to run multiple operating systems under a single computer or single server. So for example, suppose so we have different types of cloud computing providers. Like we can have our own solution called as a private cloud, and we can use the existing application over the internet, or the public cloud. Public cloud runs over the internet, which is readily available. So in terms of public cloud, you need not have to install anything in your computer. You just go to the cloud service provider's website. There you have to select the required hardware and the operating system, and just click on deploy. And once you click on deploy button, it will deploy the operating system, and will give you that in a fraction of seconds, right? And the biggest benefit of cloud computing is the scalability, right? Scalability means what? It has a very high scalability. High scalability means what? If you want to suppose right now you are running an application with suppose 10 GB of RAM and 10 GB of RAM, and suppose 20 GB of hard drive. All of a sudden suppose your business has increased, or your customers are increased from suppose 100 customer to suppose 5000 customer, right? So cloud has a mechanism called as a auto scaling, right? So auto scaling basically allows you do not have to shut down the machine. So auto scaling basically scales the computational resources automatically as per the requirement. For example, if your customers are increased from 100 to the 5000, it automatically increase the bandwidth, automatically increase the CPU size, automatically increase the memory size, So you need not have to do anything. It is automated. It is automated, right? So as per the requirement, it scales up, and when there is no load, then it automatically scales down. So that's why cloud computing becomes one of the favorable technology in the IT industry. And the if you see the costing, the cloud servers are basically very cheaper. So that's why nowadays you would see the all the server rooms in the IT industries are replaced with the public clouds, or they may have a few servers where they can run their confidential or the mission critical applications, right? And few servers are connected to the cloud using the hybrid cloud technology, right? So cloud computing basically provides you unlimited computing power, unlimited storage power, different networking solutions, storage management, everything, each and everything which is required to run the application, right? So, right, that's why it is one of the famous technology, right? And it is still if you see the Gartner's hype cycle, so by 2030, right, 2030 means after 10 8 to 9 years, it will go at the peak. Right now also 70 to 80% of organizations are using the cloud computing as a basic technology for fulfilling the requirement of their customers, their applications, their servers, everything they have deployed onto the cloud. But it will go again on the peak, right? So it's an emerging model in which user can gain access to their application. The biggest benefit of cloud is it provides you access to the application from anywhere, at any time, on any device, right? You can basically deploy your application, and you can execute or you can run your application from anywhere. As internet is available globally, you can access your application from anywhere, at any time, on any connected device, right? And the basically it is the latest approach used for computing, and having lot of benefits over the traditional grid computing, high performance computing, high throughput computing concept, right? So the characteristics of cloud computing are: first, it provides a rapid elasticity. So as I said, auto scaling is nothing but the rapid elasticity, right? So let me tell you an example. As you know, in earlier days, when university result used to be come out, and on that day, suppose a result used to come at suppose 12 o'clock. Then at time you may have seen that the page cannot display used to be seen over the browser, right? That was because of the scalability. That is because of the scalability, right? So earlier days, basically the server used to allow only 2000 or 3000 slots for executing the web applications. But if at a time, suppose 10,000 slots used to be executed onto the servers, so those 10,000 hits used to be executed onto the server, and that's why it used to crash the server. So because of the crashing of the server, the services would get stopped. So because that during those days, the cloud concept were not there, the scalability concept were not there. So because of the scalability feature, nowadays you won't see such type of crashing of the or the stoppage of the web pages, right? Because cloud computing has built-in auto scaling. Auto scaling means what? If number of user increases, if number of hit increases, it automatically scales up the CPU size, it automatically scales up the RAM size, it automatically scales up the storage size, right? And when there is no load, it automatically downgraded. When there is no load, then it automatically scales down it, right? That is called as an elasticity. Then it has a dynamic load balancing, right? Dynamically it can basically equally distribute the load across the multiple servers, so that no server would be underloaded or the overloaded. So the cloud services are basically based on the utility based model. The utility based model means what? You need not have to pay for any setup. You have to pay whatever you use. For example, I want to run an application, right? And suppose that application requires a 10 GB of RAM, and suppose 5 GB of storage space along with the Windows operating system. So the utility based model means what? If I use that particular virtual machine for 1 hour, then I have to pay for that 1 hour only. I need not have to pay for the entire setup cost, right? So utility based means what? You have to pay whatever you use. And if you see the Amazon, so in the afternoon session I'll show you the Amazon bracket, AWS bracket, which is an quantum computing technology basically provided by the Amazon. So there I'll show you how to create VMs, how to execute it, and then how to deploy your applications onto the Amazon brackets, right? So it's a utility based model where you have to pay whatever you use, right? Then it supports the virtualized resources. High availability is one of the main important feature provided by the cloud computing, because cloud runs over the internet, and basically most of the, whenever you create a virtual machine, whenever you create a virtual machine on the public cloud platform, the replica of your VM gets created into the another DR. DR is nothing but the data center, right? So DC is nothing but data center, right? So the public cloud provider basically has different availability zones and the data centers across multiple regions, right? So if any disaster so basically they have the built-in feature called as a DR. DR stands for disaster recovery. So if any disaster happens accidentally, if anything happens, so you'll not basically lose your services. There will be no shortage of services, there will be no downtime. So that is called as a high availability, and this high availability is basically achieved through the disaster recovery provided by the cloud provider, right? Then it has a optimum resource utilization because it uses your logical and the physical, both the types of CPU. It has a resource pooling, because when you, so horizontal scaling is one of the feature provided by the cloud computing. Suppose you have one computer with 4 GB RAM and 20 GB space, and suppose you want to run an application which requires a 20 GB of RAM, right? So in that case you can basically you can connect five network computers, and you can consolidate the RAM of 5 computers together into the resource pool. You can consolidate the 4 GB RAM of 5 computers together into the resource pool, and that 20 GB of RAM could be used for executing your application, right? That 20 GB of RAM could be used for executing your application. That is called as a resource pooling. Suppose you have another application which requires, suppose 25 to 25 CPUs. You are running a big application, right? Complex application, and which requires a 25 CPUs, right? So in that case, suppose you have a Core i5 CPU, and suppose you have 5 computers with Core i5 CPU. So you can create a resource pool of them, such a way that all five CPUs of all computers are basically collected together into the resource pool to fulfill your 25 CPUs requirement, right? That is called as a resource pooling, and which is one of the biggest that means which is one of the very important characteristics of the cloud computing. Then most of the cloud services are provided on demand. On demand means what? You need not, whenever you want, you just go to the cloud service provider's website, create a service and execute it, and it's a self service. Self service means what? The cloud service provider basically provides not only the computing, along with computing they provide you different solutions. Like in the afternoon I'll show you the Amazon Web Service, AWS portal, where you'll see they provide the services for the compute, they provide services for the big data analytics, they provide services for the machine learning, they provide services for the serverless computing using Amazon Lambda, right? They provide the quantum computing services using Amazon Braket. They provide storage services using S3, EBS, and the ELB or the Glaciers. So like they have all the types of services. So self-service means what? Whichever service you want to use, you just select it and use it. And once you stop the service, you have to pay the bill. So bill would be a utility based bill. Utility means what? You have to pay whatever you use. If you use that particular service for 1 hour, you need not have to pay for entire year or entire month. You just have to pay for the 1 hour. And nowadays the Amazon and Google have started billing pay per second. That means if you use it for 10 seconds, just pay for 10 seconds, right? Just pay for the 10 seconds. That's why it's one of the very cheaper technology, right? And broad network access is one again one of the characteristic of cloud computing, right? So cloud computing basically evolved. So basically cloud, as you know, cloud is nowadays a trending technology. And if you compare a cloud with the quantum, basically the cloud has right, some many limitations, right? And in terms of speed, if you see the speed of cloud and the quantum, you definitely will get a more speed, very high speed in the quantum computing. But what network technology is used in the quantum computing, cloud computing? So cloud computing basically used to use a concept of the SDN. Cloud computing uses a concept of SDN, right? SDN stands for software defined networking, right? So software defined networking means what? The software defined networking basically allows you to control the operations of the network with the use of software. With the use of software, basically we have a devices like a switches, routers, or we have the firewalls or the gateways. So every device in the network has two planes. One is called as a data plane, another is called as a control plane. The data plane is basically used for flowing the information or the data from one end to the another end. That is called as a traffic flow. So traffic flow is always handled by the data plane, while the controlling of the data flow, that means from which port it should be flowed, at what speed it should be flowed, that is called as a control information. So while the controlling of the data flow is managed by the control plane. So control plane basically plays a very important role in the computer network, right? Because if any congestion occurs at the particular port of the network, then it's a job of control plane to basically isolate that port and flow the data through the other port. So control plane plays a very important role in providing the faster data flow between the two networks, right? So SDN is the approach to approach to the networking that uses a software based controller and the APIs, right? Software based controller. So basically what we do in SDN, we basically isolate the data plane and the control plane, and we install the control plane in one of the server. We install the control plane in one of the server, and that server will be responsible for basically managing the data flow between the two entities or the two servers or the two computers, right? So the software defined network used for isolating the data and control. So data plane basically used to be lies inside the device itself, while the control plane is taken out from the switches, hub or the router, and they basically installed into the one of the server. That server is called as an controller or the software based controller, right? So that controller server is responsible for monitoring the traffic across every switch, so that there will be no congestion. It can basically limit the bandwidth or can give the more bandwidth to a particular port where the high speed data transmission is required, right? So all the control information is managed by the control plane. That means we use a software for managing the entire network flow. We use a software to manage the entire network and the data flow. So that's why SDN is found to be one of the very demanding technologies nowadays, used by that means provided by the different pioneer companies like Cisco and the Juniper, right? They promote the SDN concept, and basically SDN often used with the concept of the NFV. NFV stands for the network function virtualization. So with the help of NFV, what you can do, basically NFV converts all the devices as connected devices, and you're allowed to convert the router to switch to router. That means you can basically take out the functionalities from the router, and you can make a switch as a router, or you can make a switch as a gateway, or you can make a gateway as a router, right? So all the types of conversion can be done using the NFV and with the help of SDN. And this SDN can be used basically with the help of controller. That is one of the most popular open source controller called as an OpenFlow, right? And this model is basically different than the traditional network, which can use the dedicated hardware to control the network traffic. So SDN can create and control the virtual network, and or control a traditional network via software. So software defined means what? We use a software to define the network, right? So till now what we have seen the basic technologies which can be used for basically computing, as well as we have seen the network right, network technology like a classical centralized computing, as well as the distributed networking for executing the complex tasks. Now next is the recent requirement of the computing, right? So the advancement to all these technologies basically, so these are the advantages of SDN, right? So the advantages of SDN are: first one, it has a centralized network provisioning, right? So centralized network provisioning means what? We'll have a centralized server which has a control plane, and that control plane would be used for managing the data flow, right? Then second one, we have the more granular security, because we basically provide a security for all the switches and their control plane through a server. So we have a more granular security, right? We have a hardware saving, because most of the time we used to use a software based virtualized switches or the virtual switches to be used for forwarding the data from one end to the another end. It has a cloud abstraction and lower the operating cost. So number of switches required in the physical network are lesser in the software defined network, are lesser in the software defined network, right? Now next, now let us start with the concept of quantum computing. So I hope you have already seen the basics about the quantum computing, right? So basically, quantum computing is not the new technology, right? It is not the new technology. It was basically proposed early in the 80s, and it was basically considered as a disruptive paradigm to solve the challenging problems, right? And those challenging problems are basically solved with the help of exponentiality or the probability, and they are basically, these problems are solved exponentially faster than the classical computing. So basically, Shor and the Growers were the two scientists who have initially used or proposed the use of the quantum computing, right? So in 1994, the Shor basically proved the disruptive potential for integer factorization. So most of the time, the factorization problems could be solved using the quantum computing, right? And it basically constitute the one of the most widely adopted algorithm for securing the communication over the internet, right? So earlier the existing algorithm or the classical algorithm used to take used to execute the integer factorization problem in billions of years, but because of intervention of quantum computing, that same problem could be solved using within few minutes or within few minutes or the hours, right? So Shor and the Growers were two scientists basically who have introduced the quantum computing, and their algorithms are still more popular in the quantum computing world because not every problem can be executed in the cloud quantum computing world, right? Not every problem can be executed in the quantum computing, right? So there are some specific algorithms which are popular, and with the help of those algorithms, you can basically you can solve your computational problems. The problems means scientific or complex computational problems which requires a high computing power and high processing power, right? So the quantum computing basically uses the quantum phenomena, right? So two important terms in the quantum computing are the superposition and the entanglement, right? And these two phenomena are used to perform the computations, right? Superposition and the entanglement, right? So the computers which perform the quantum computations are called as a quantum computer, and basically these computers are basically used for solving the certain computational problems like integer factorization or the or any scientific application which requires an higher computing power and should generate a faster result than the existing computational technologies. So basically there are several models of the quantum computers, right? Including the quantum circuit model or the quantum Turing machine or adiabatic quantum computer or the one-way quantum computer or the cellular automata. The most widely used model is the quantum circuit, right? Because in quantum circuit basically you used to design a circuit, and based on the circuit we used to execute the several problems, and the base or the backbone of the quantum circuit is called as an quantum bit, right? Quantum bit, while we have the logical bits, in the quantum we have a quantum bits. These quantum bits are also called as a qubit, right? So these qubits are basically analogous to bit in the classical computer, like a classical computer. Now basically what are qubits? So these qubits are basically a building block of quantum computation, right? And these qubits are basically realized with the different technologies like electron spin or the light polarization or superconducting circuit. But the principle of quantum mechanics basically hold the independent of the underlying technology. And as you know, in the classical bit, we have only two digits or we have only one state, either 0 or 1, right? We have only one state, either 0 or 1. But in superposition, we have two states which can be run simultaneously, or the two simultaneous states are there, 0 and 1. Both these states could be there in the superposition. So that's why superposition and the entanglement plays a very important role in the quantum computing. So two qubit can exist in the superposition of course. So we have basically combination of it. based on the exponential. So if you have a 2 qubit, so 2 qubit means what? Basically formula for generating superposition is a 2 raised to n. So if you have a 2 qubit, then it can exist in the superposition of 4 states. If you have 3 qubit, that means 2 raised to 3. So it can exist in superposition of 8 states, right? And if you have 4 qubit, then it can generate up to 16 state, that is 2 raised to 4, right? And because of this exponential, the computing power of quantum grows exponentially as more qubits are added. So in the afternoon session, when I'll show you the Amazon bracket, there we have to define how many qubits we want to use for executing the particular problem or particular task, right? So the difference between the classical and quantum mechanics lays in the concept of quantum entanglement, right? The entanglement is like a correlation, right? So it's a sort of correlation with no counterpart in the classical world. So in a nutshell, the entanglement is a special case of superposition of multiple qubits, where overall quantum states can't be described in the term. So quantum information processor exploit the quantum features of the superposition and the entanglement. Now let us see how quantum computing could be used in the computer network. So network means what? There are basically interconnection between two or more computers. That means the two or more quantum computers, right? So any interaction with the environment irreversibly affect any quantum state, causing the loss of quantum properties called as an decoherence, right? So the computational power of the quantum device is dictated by the number of qubits that can be embedded in the interconnected network. So hence the question arises how to scale the network. So to scale the network, either we have to use the quantum network or we have to use the quantum internet. We have to use the quantum internet, right? So quantum internet means what? We basically have a multiple quantum computers, right, which are networked together and which are able to share the quantum states among the remote server, right? That is the answer for that. So quantum network is basically correlated with the quantum internet, where we basically create and develop a network between the two or more quantum computers and basically use for processing the computations. So while processing the computation, the major concept comes, which is called as an quantum teleportation, right? So teleportation is nothing but the transferring of data, right, or transferring the quantum information. So quantum teleportation is the technique for transferring the quantum information from sender at one location to the receiver at the another location. So while teleportation is commonly ported in the science fiction to transfer the physical object from one location to the another location with the quantum information, right? So the one of the challenge in the quantum teleportation is the basically sender never knows the location of the recipient nor the quantum state that will be transferred, right? Sender never knows the location and the state of the quantum while transferring a data or while transferring the quantum information, right? So the challenges faced in the quantum teleportation include the no cloning theorem. No cloning means what? The cloning of the quantum state is not basically supported by the quantum computing, right? You can basically cut and paste it, but you can't copy and paste it, right? So challenge faced in quantum teleportation include the no cloning theorem. That means you are not allowed to clone the state of the quantum, right? So we said the limitation that creating the exact copy of creating an exact copy of quantum state is impossible, right? So the no deleting theorem state that the quantum information cannot be destroyed the size. That means while transporting a data from one machine to another machine, that means sender to receiver, you have to basically make sure that you are achieving the two important theorems. First theorem is the no cloning theorem, where you are not cloning the state of the any of the quantum from one machine to another machine. And second is the no deleting theorem. That means what? While transporting a data, you make sure that the quantum is not quantum state or quantum information is not being destroyed during the transmission, right? So no deleting theorem states that the quantum information can't be destroyed. The size of the information transported, the amount of information the sender and receiver has before the transportation, or the noise that the teleportation system has with its circuitry. So the quantum network is the backbone which facilitates the transmission of information in the form of quantum bits, right? And the quantum processor is the small computer which is being able to perform the execution of quantum logic gate based on the number of qubits. And this quantum network is works similar in the way that the classical network works. Classical network means what? The network in the other computational technology like cloud computing, grid computing, right? And the main difference is that the quantum networking is basically better as compared to the other computing technologies, while the processing power or the computational speed comes into the picture, right? And finally, there is a quantum internet, which is a network enabled. That means quantum internet is nothing but the if you use a network. That means in the quantum computing we can have a localized network or the globalized network. Globalized network is nothing but the internet. And if you use the internet to solve a computational problem over the quantum, we have to take care of we have to basically make sure that we are achieving the two basic theorem: no cloning and the no deletion. Along with, we need to focus on to entanglement and the superposition of the bits, as well as the quantum internet. Basically, we have to make sure that while transmitting a data, both the sender and receiver should be basically sync and the enabled. And right, so quantum internet is a network enabling quantum communication, which is among the remote quantum devices, right? So it uses a channel for transmitting a data from one end to the another end, right? So it's a communication mechanism that is used for all the quantum information transmission, and is the channel used for the teleportation. However, in addition to the quantum channel, the traditional channel must also be accompany a qubit to preserve the quantum information. So it's a network that will be used for quantum devices that exchange some information within the environment that harness the odd laws of the quantum mechanics. Now we have just seen the basics about the quantum computing, which you have already seen yesterday, right? And the cloud computing, grid computing, distributed computing, and so on. Now I'm going to show you some of the tools which can be used for simulating the network in the quantum computing. So these are the four tools which are very popular in the market, right? With these, all four tools are basically open source tools, right? Like a sequence, then Simulacron, NetSquid, and OKD-NetSim, right? So quantum key and QD-NetSim is QD-NetSim is the quantum key distribution net simulator, and quantum key distribution net simulator. Let us see one by one. So among these, basically the net sequence, the sequence is the framework or is the simulator which basically provides you the Python based notebooks, and which can be used for simulating the quantum network, right? Then Simulacron is the one of the proprietary software. NetSquid is also basically developed by the community called as the NetSquid community. They provide you the free Python based file which can be run to simulate the entire network for the quantum computing. And finally there is a uh, uh, yes, and finally there is a QKD NetSim, quantum key distribution net simulator. Let us see one by one, right? So very first simulator I'm going to show you is the quantum. I'll just show you the process how to use it. So very first simulator is the QKD, quantum key distribution, right? Right. So QKD NetSim is a quantum key distribution network simulator, right? So basically it is used for simulating all the network operations, which can be basically why we are using the simulator, because it is not affordable to basically perform the simulation onto the actual quantum computing servers, right? Because the contents of quantum computing servers are so expensive. So we can have a simulation of those that means we can have a simulation of those operations which can be performed onto the physical quantum servers, right? So this QKD NetSim basically is a network simulator which is based on the NS3. I hope most of the people already know what NS2 is. NS3 is the recent version of network simulator version 3. Version 2 we already know, NS2 and NS3, right? So the basic requirement for simulating the QKD NetSim is you must have NS3 pre-installed in your machine. So NS3 can't be installed into the Windows computer, but if you want to use it, you can basically install the Cygwin. The name of package is Cygwin. So you have to install Cygwin first, and on the top of Cygwin, you can deploy the NS3. But you will get a degraded performance because most of the time Cygwin gets corrupted and you may not able to execute the job, right? So NS3 installation on Windows 10. If you see here, download and install Cygwin first, then download the NS3. Then after downloading NS3, you have to extract it, and after extraction of NS3, you have to start the Cygwin service. And after starting Cygwin service, you have to go to NS3, and then after going to NS3, you have to deploy it. And then once the installation is done, then you will be able to execute the NS3 simulations on the top of it. Right now, let us see how to use it. So they have provided the basically QKD is the community who basically provides you a free source code, right, for simulating the quantum network. And this is what the link is for the GitHub. So I'll just go to the github.com. This is what the link is, where examples are provided, and these are the standard examples for the quantum computing. So we can have the energy conservation model or the harvesting with the help of quantum computing. Second, error model is there, right, based on QKD, Q distribution model. This is for deploying the IPv6. So that is the fragmentation of IPv6 in quantum computing, or the ping test, then loose routing, or the fragmentation, right? Then followed by that, matrix topology is there, right? And the scripts are provided in every directory. So this is the script which you have to execute, WA script, right? You have to execute the script to execute that particular problem. This is for the routing. So as we know, we have different types of routing in the network, right? Static and the dynamic. In the static, in the dynamic, we have a RIP. RIP stands for routing information protocol. RIP simple network. So you can deploy a RIP simple network for the quantum based circuit, right? RIP simple network.cc. This is what the code for it, right? This is for what the code for it they have provided. So it is entirely written in the uh, NS3 language, right? TASM, right? And then I'll go back here, go back to the main branch, and these are the different traffic control is brought. These are the all types of simulations they have provided. Now let us see how to use it. So what I have done, I have installed Ubuntu in my virtual machine. This is what my Ubuntu setup is. So let me show you how to install it. So as you know, quantum computing is nowadays basically basically a new technology, right? So many of you are also doing the research into it, right? So this is what the QKD NetSim you can use to deploy your problem or your case studies onto the NS3 simulator, right? So I'm still my installation is going on. I'll wait for some time. I'll just show you how to install it. I'll show you the procedure how to install it. So very first step, you have to have NS3 installed in your computer. So this is the operating system I have downloaded from the osboxes.com. So osboxes is the website, OSBOXES, Ubuntu, right? So boxes.com will provide you the ready-made image of the Ubuntu. So you need not have to download the ISO file or have to install it inside the virtual machine, right? This is what the readily available Ubuntu virtual machine is provided, right? So just go to the osboxes.com, and once you reach there, it will show you the download button along with the username and the password, right, which can be changed. You can change the username and password of password of the operating system, which you have downloaded from the osboxes.com. So it is taking some time, right? I'm just closing. This is the open source website, right? These are the different versions of it: 20.010, 20.4, 19.10. Whichever version you want, just click on it. Below that, right, the lower version comes 14.4, 18.4, right, 16.4. Suppose I want to Ubuntu 18.4 desktop, so I'll just click on it. 18.4, let's close this, and this is the image for the so depends on your virtualization software, it will provide you the image. If you are using the VMware, It has an image of VMware also, as well as the Oracle VirtualBox also. Both of these virtualization hypervisors are free, right? You can freely download it from the VMware website or the Oracle website, right? So 18.04 images for VirtualBox, right? And then this is what the option for downloading it. Either I can download the VDI file or VMDK file. VDI for the Oracle VirtualBox and VMDK for the VMDK for the VMware. So I'll just click on the Ubuntu option here, and after that I'll just click on download button to download it. Right here I have option to download it. Right, Groovy Gorilla is the name of the version. VirtualBox 64-bit or VMware 64-bit. The size of the operating system is the 20 GB. So I just have to click on download button, and once I'll click on download button, it will start downloading in my computer. Right, depends on your internet speed, it will take the time. And once the entire operating system gets downloaded, right, and yeah, it has started now, right? And here they have provided the username and password. Go to the info button. Here the username of the operating system is osboxes, password is osboxes.org, right? So once you download the operating system, then you have to go to the VMware, right? This is what my VMware is. Then go to the file, and then you have to open. Let me open one more instance of VM player. So once downloading is done, you can go to player option, file, and then open, and then select the path where you have downloaded that virtual machine. So this is what the path I have downloaded, one of the virtual machine Ansible servers. I can click on open button. Once I'll open it, it will show me the hardware configuration of that virtual machine, right? So this virtual machine basically consumes the resources from your physical computer, right? Like here you could see it has a RAM, it has a memory, it has a storage, right? This is what the processor. If I want, so my laptop has 5 processors. If I want to increase the number of processors, I can increase, right? 4 processors. This is for the hard drive, which I can increase or decrease the size of hard drive. Then network adapter is there, processors, memory, 4 GB, 5 GB, 8 GB. It takes the resources logically, not physically. Just select the resources as per your convenience, and then click on OK, and finally click on play virtual machine. So once you click on play virtual machine, at the background it will open the operating system like this. This is what my operating system is. Just give me a second. Yeah. Right, so I'm running the operating system inside the box. This is what my operating system is, right? And once the operating system is ready, you can download and install the ns3, right? So how to download and install ns3? So to download and install ns3, you have to go to the ns3 website, or you can type here ns3 download for ubuntu. So to take you to the ns3 website, installation of ns3, just go here, and it will provide you the zip file of ns3. Right, so my VM is running a little bit slower. That's why I'll show you onto the Windows browser, right? So this is what, sorry. So here I'll open the website nasm.com, right? nsnam.com, ns3 installation in Ubuntu. So here the option is provided. Either I can download it through command, or can download it from the website, right? Free installation of Ubuntu and the dependencies. So first I have to update the repository of Ubuntu. I just have to copy this command and paste into the ns3, followed by these are the environmental files which are required to build the ns3 packages, right? It requires a build essential to install the compilers like a C++, right? GCC or G++, right? This is for the auto configuration, automake to execute the installer in the ns3 package. Then, right, this is what the development package, right? This is for Python graphic wizard. Then this is for concurrent version system, for if you are creating a multiple versions of your document, CVS or Mercurial can be used, right? So these are the dependencies which are used for executing the ns3 package. As it is, just copy this command and paste into your terminal. And finally, this is what the link for nsnam.com, right? And just go here and download the ns3 package. So I'll go to that website nsnam.com, and this is the option to download the network simulator. Just click on download button, and we'll show you the different versions over here. So whichever version you want, you can. So this is what the latest version is. So I'll select the 3.32, right? And finally click on this, now download this link. Click on this link to start downloading ns 3.32, right? So once downloading is done, it will download the dar.bz file, which is nothing but the zip file, right? So after downloading the zip file, what you have to do, you have to go to the Ubuntu, right? There you have to extract this file, right? So you can extract the file using two ways. Either you can right click and extract it, or second way, you can use the tar command. Right? This is what my ns all-in-one file is. So you can right click and you can extract it here. I'll just click on archive manager to extract it. I'll select all the packages here. Right, this is what my ns all-in-one. Just extract it. I'll click on extract button, then I'll extract it into the home or the desktop. So just select the desktop here and just extract it. So once you'll extract it, it will get unzipped onto the desktop. Right, so it will take some time. I have only 20 minutes to show all this. So I'll just skip this. I'll show you in the afternoon session, the lateral part, that means how to execute the simulation. But because it will take some time to complete the installation on one, so my installation will take another 5 to 10 minutes. So instead of that, I'll go ahead and will show you the further process. So very first step, you have to install the ns3, right? After installing ns3, right, this is what the website is. And once you extract it, after extraction, what you have to do, you have to execute the command called .build.py. So .build.py is used for building the ns package. That means it will start the installation. So the ns3 comes with the built-in examples. So if you want a built-in examples, then you have to execute minus minus enable example. So this directory has around 2400 examples. So if you basically install it with the examples, it may take 2 to 3 hours to complete the entire installation, right? Enable examples. And enable test is used to test all the dependencies of the ns3, all the dependencies. So you can skip this. You can directly execute the ./build.py. So it will execute the build.py package, right? It's a python based file. It will start installation, and once the installation is done, it will show you the directory like this, right? ns all-in-one 3.27, right? And if you want to execute any of the script, then you have to go to the you have to execute .waf, which is the execution command, and then run, and the name of followed by name of the simulation. This is what the name of the simulation you have to provide to execute your particular simulation. Well, back to the QKD net, right? So here what you have to do, once the ns3 is installed, once ns3 gets installed, then you have to download this entire directory into the linux. So to download it, you can go to code, and this is what the option to download the zip. So click on download zip, and once you download the zip of this all examples, you have to again extract this directory. I'll provide you all the steps to install the QKD NetSim, as well as how to execute these simulations onto it. Right? I'll provide you one PDF file which will have all the screenshots of installation of NS3 along with QKD NetSim and their simulations. Right? Although as we are running short of time, I won't be able to show you all these steps, right? But I'll just give you the glimpse of this, right? That means how to execute. So this is the network simulator for the QKD, quantum key distribution algorithm, right? Quantum key distribution network simulation model, and the entire information is provided. You must have a running ns3, which is the prerequisite for executing the packages. And how to execute the script? So as I said, dot slash waf is the command to run the simulation. Followed by that, there is a directory called as a scratch. Here is the scratch directory. The scratch directory has, see, this is what the scratch directory, and this directory has all the simulation. These are the simulations. So whichever simulation you want to run, scratch simulation or the sequential quantum computing or the overlay channel or the QKD channel or the simple P2P system using a quantum computing, these simulations can be directly executed. Just have to type the directory name slash, directory name is a scratch slash name of the simulation, and once you run this, it will show you the entire simulation of it. I will show you in the afternoon session. If I'll be able to complete the installation, definitely I'll show you the one or two simulations based on this, right? So understood this? Yes. Have you understood what is the procedure for installing the QKD NetSim? So this QKD NetSim can be used for executing the network, right? Quantum key distribution network, or the rather you can say quantum network or the quantum internet applications. Quantum network or the quantum internet application, the simulation, right? It is a simulation, not the exact quantum processing engine. It doesn't have a quantum processing engine, but just simulate how it works, right? So this is what one of the simulator which can be used for deploying the network over the quantum computing technology. The second simulator is called as a NetSquid, right? So NetSquid is basically NetSquid also has all the examples based on the quantum network, like a teleportation. That means how do we do teleportation? How can we do the entangle? How do we install the repeater into it, right? So these are the options for deploying the different network application on the top of the NetSquid. Now let me show you how to install NetSquid. So to install NetSquid, you do not have to do anything. Only 2 or 3 packages are required, right? So I'll just type here NetSquid. So NetSquid is the basically a network simulator for the quantum information processing. It's a network simulator for quantum information processing, right? Based on the quantum network. So this is what the website is, and this is the open source website, right? It's a tool for quantum network design. Here you can design the quantum network, right? Now how to download it? So to download it, you have to go to the get NetSquid, but before going to NetSquid, you have to create the account. You can read the quantum network simulator for the quantum information design discrete event. So I'll go to the get NetSquid option, and once I'll reach there, right, first I have to sign in. So click on register now button, right? Then inside this page, you have to accept the agreement. So I agree to these terms. This is the open source website only, so you can blindly click on I agree to use it. Select one username, select the provide the email address, password, confirm password, and followed by that, just specify your name, your organization or location India, right? What your the minimal thing they require to maintain into their database, right? And this is what the confirmation of registration. The animal that is represented in it, squid. So the animal is a squid only, so you can paste the squid option here and submit. And once you click on submit button, they'll provide you the link. They'll provide you the link to download the NetSquid. So I'll just type my username and password here. I'll click on login button, and as soon as I log in, it will show me all these options. So first I can download the document for using the NetSquid in my computer, as well as I can download it. All right, can download it. So to download it, you just go to the NetSquid, then get NetSquid, right? And it will show you the command. This is what the command you have to install into the Python. So to run NetSquid basically provides you the ready-made notebook or the Python files. So like this, the Python files are provided, which you can directly execute and simulate the network. So this kind of network can be executed into the inside the Python. So this is what the command is: pip space install extra index URL. But remember that NetSquid is basically not supported for the Windows operating system. They provide you the link for the Linux operating system. So I'll just show you what error it shows when you execute this command. So pip space install extra index, and they provide you the URL from where you can download the NetSquid. And while executing this command, you have to provide the NetSquid ID and the password. Right here, it is asking for NetSquid ID and the password. So it is asking username for the NetSquid. So I'll type my username followed by the password. Once I'll successfully type the username and password, it will show you couldn't find the version that satisfies the requirement. Why? Because the no matching distribution. Because NetSquid right now, NetSquid provide the distribution for Linux operating system. Provide the distribution for Linux operating system. So here you could go and can check the distributions for NetSquid. Just press enter and just paste it here. These are the right. These are the simulation tools. Now, if I'll go to simulation tools, you could see these are the wheel files for to be deployed onto the Python. Or here I'll just write NetSquid distributions. So the distribution for Windows are not provided, but if you search for the Linux, you will get the link. I'll send you the link also where you will get the. Just a minute. Let me check. It might be here.